So welcome everyone. I know Barb, Joe, and Jeff. So that's who I am. So let's start with Joe here.
I'm Joe. I'm still sort of at the stick in a pot stage. I think my oldest things that I've grown from seed are like 2 years old.
That's good.
But yeah, I've been mostly doing tropicals because I live in an apartment and my balcony faces north, so
Yeah.
I've got lots of south-facing windows and grow lights. And
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So
it's been keeping them going so far. So
Yeah. That's good. And you're enjoying it, like watching the seedlings grow, and
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of fun, isn't it? I enjoy growing from seed.
Hi, I'm Barb. I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I don't currently have any bonsai, and over the years I have purchased a tree and killed a tree many times. And now I'm a part of a bonsai club in Ann Arbor, and I have heard from many people that I have to have about 10 trees. It's because when you just have one tree and it dies, it's kind of like, oh, I'm terrible at this. So I'm going to try having a few more trees and really trying to.
And what's the name of your club in Michigan?
It's called the Ann Arbor Bonsai Society.
Ann Arbor Bonsai Society.
Hi, I'm Jeff Murphy. I'm from West Bloomfield, Michigan, and I've been doing bonsai for about roughly 3 years. And yeah, ever since COVID hit, I was probably watching more and more YouTube videos and stumbled upon Nigel planting seeds, so it inspired me to plant some tree seeds and kind of all went from there. And now I got quite a few trees in the collection. I do have a Brazilian rain tree, and I just, but yeah, like Barb was saying, it helps to have a lot more trees because you tend to put too much attention into them and you possibly kill them that way.
Yeah. Kindness.
Yeah, I love it so much.
Here's some more water.
Yeah, so I'm happy to be here and looking forward to this class.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Okay, well let's start with the slideshow. I try and keep the slideshow to a minimum because we got to work on our trees. But if you have any questions or anything, this is mainly specific about Brazilian rain trees, not on general bonsai care. So we'll talk more about that. So the Brazilian rain tree is a rain forest tree. The leaves fold up usually before the rain hits. So that's why if the Brazilian rain tree has the leaves folded up, you know it's going to rain. So that's why they call it a rain tree. And there's several species of trees that are called rain trees. There's probably 5. If you just type in rain tree in Google, there's a lot of species. There's one in Hawaii that's a giant umbrella-shaped canopy that they call a rain tree. A different species than this, larger leaves. But they're all kind of similar. They're all called rain trees because the leaves fold up. So in the sun, if the tree gets too much sun, the leaves will fold up too. So they're kind of a perfect tree. I can take my Brazilian rain tree from indoor lighting, put it in full sun, and it won't scorch the leaves because they just stay folded all day long until they acclimatize, and then they'll come out. So they're kind of like, not smart, but they adapt to their environment very well. So also after repotting, you'll find that the leaves will stay folded up, and then as the roots start growing and the tree establishes itself, you'll see the leaves will come out usually in the morning. When the light gets intense in the afternoon, they'll fold back up, and then in the evening they'll fold out again. So it's just not ready for that full sun yet. And as it gets stronger and stronger, then the leaves will come out early in the morning. They'll stay out all day long until the evening, and then they'll fold up. So they're brilliant trees for bonsai. So these trees were pretty well unknown in the bonsai world until 1970s. Jim Moody, who ran Juniper Bonsai Nursery in the States, got some seeds from his sister-in-law that she collected in Brasilia, Brazil. So she was something to do with the State Department or something. And she saw this tree growing in the city with seed pods on it. She sent some to her dad, or was it dad? Yeah. And he planted them and they grew, and He developed it. Jim had 5 germinate. For 7 years they grew. One in particular faring well in a Cascade pot. He styled it in an upright position, and the tree was recognized nationally through magazines and even in a book. So that's a picture of Jim Moody there, and I guess that is his Brazilian rain tree. Yeah, it is. So the next slide. For many years, no one knew the scientific name, so it was just called a mystery tree because he got these seeds in the mail and no one had ever seen it. And so here's where their family, the legume family, the scientific name is, I can't pronounce that. Can anyone pronounce that? I'm not good with Latin. Anyway, they're commonly called tortum. You'll see it's Pitheciliobium. Pitheciliobium tortum is what you'll commonly hear them called as. Brazilian rain tree is bonsai. So this is a famous picture on the internet. This is from Bonsai Empire. If you've ever seen their website. The Brazilian rain tree is listed as critically endangered. So that's why I always try and find pictures of the trees growing in the wild to get styling ideas from. You won't find many of these growing in the wild. I found, well, I'll show you, there's a few pictures of trees in the city, but I couldn't find any pictures of them growing in the wild at all. Like not in a rainforest or anything, just kind of in the city. Critically endangered. So seeds are almost impossible to get for the most part. Any Brazilian rain tree in the United States and many other parts of the world can be traced back to that original plant cultivated by Jim Moody, as almost all of them came from cuttings off that tree. So all these are from that original tree that he grew back in the 1970s, which is hard to believe when you think, well, they're popular in this part of the world, the United States, but in England, I don't think you can get them, Europe, because I've had lots of people email me and say, oh, I would really love a Brazilian rain tree, but they're all. So all of them came cuttings off that tree. So there's one that's defoliated. You can defoliate these trees. They respond well to defoliation. They're vigorous growers. So Brazilian rain tree styling. So these are about the only 2 pictures. There's a few pictures of the first tree there from different angles, but very few pictures of them on the internet growing as other than a bonsai. So creating bonsai trees is about reflecting nature in miniature. So a bonsai tree, it doesn't have to mimic or shape the appearance of its natural tree, but generally these trees, you can see the height of it here. They don't grow to great big trees. They're kind of, they say about 15 feet tall is about as tall as they'll mainly get. So generally, you can do 2 things. You can make this tree mimic another tree, so you can style it like one of those giant umbrella trees from Hawaii, or you can style it any way you want, but generally you can see the form of it. It's kind of a trunk with a broom style. It's kind of mainly how you would style one. They tend to have straight trunks and then really wild looking branches usually. And you can see how the branches, they just kind of wind and go everywhere. So it's a pretty cool tree. Pruning. So it's best to start your Brazilian rain tree with a young tree and carefully prune it over many years to create a nice bonsai. The tree does not like being cut back hard, and this can often kill off a large portion of the tree. The roots also don't like being pruned hard, as it can cause death from the root right up to the branch it was feeding. Pruning should always be done leaving a stub that can be cleaned up later after it is dried up. Pruning too close can cause dieback down the branch or the trunk. So they're very linear. The flow goes from the root up to the branch in a linear path. Another tree that's very linear is the eastern white cedar. If you cut a root off, a strip of the trunk will die back and maybe right up to a branch. So they don't like, they won't be fed from other roots. They're very linear. So, cause dieback. Wiring. Wiring can also cause dieback in the branches. It's better to clip and grow these trees. We'll talk more about that later. A large tree is difficult to reduce to a bonsai size as you end up with a lot of deadwood on the tree from large cuts. So I've included on the left and the right there's a lot of deadwood on those trees, which is fine. Usually deadwood eventually rots. It looks fantastic at first. Long term, usually deadwood now these do have hard wood, but you're going to have to apply wood hardener to them, really take care of your deadwood, otherwise it eventually starts rotting, especially at the base of the tree where all the moisture is, and you'll get nice deadwood and then it'll rot away here and you get this weird undercut. So there's a lot of trees that you can collect, a big tree like a maple, you can collect a big tree, cut it down to size, regrow all your branches, everything heals up nice and you get a nice tree. This is not one of those trees. This is a tree that you should start with a small tree and grow it to size. It's not to create a quick bonsai out of. It's a long-term kind of tree that has to be carefully managed over the years to get a really nice tree. And you'll get a really nice tree. This is one of the few species of trees that you can start off with a small tree in a pot, keep it in a pot, and over many, many years, it will thicken up like to a massive trunk in the pot. You don't have to grow them in the ground or in a training pot. In a bonsai pot, they'll thicken up tremendously, and you'll get a fantastic tree out of it. The best Brazilian rain trees are usually start from a small cutting or a seed, not one that's been hacked down from a great big tree, because they just start rotting away. And you can carve the deadwood. It looks great at first, but then eventually it starts rotting. And so I think this is like the perfect size to start off with. BRT Care. Hey, there's me. They like moist soil, but not too wet and not too dry. So this is my Sarissa. I don't know if you've seen that on the channel. That's another tree that likes moist soil, not too wet, not too dry. So watering is critical on it. You can't just water in the morning and forget about it, because when it needs water, you gotta water it. Otherwise, usually it's because they have very fine root tips, and if they dry, they die off. And then when you re-water it, it's gotta grow new root tips to feed the tree. And if you overwater it after it's dried out, which most people do, then those new root tips start growing and they start rotting. So it's kind of catch-22. The tree never regains its strength after drying out. So you have to be, yes, Bart?
So the Sarissa is my most recent dead tree.
Okay.
And so how do you know when to water it exactly? Because I think I knew it needed constant moisture, but I did something wrong.
Usually I tell by the color of the soil.
Oh.
As the soil starts drying out, it goes to a lighter color.
Okay.
So you know what it looks like wet, you know what it looks like dry. Halfway in between there is when it needs water.
Okay, good. All right.
And you have to have good draining soil, so you can't overwater. If you have organic content in your soil, it'll retain too much water and it could cause it to rot. So you need a free draining soil and water it when it needs it.
Okay, great.
You know.
Thank you.
They need a period of good sunshine each day if possible. You can overwinter them by a windowsill with a grow light, but they do need, like any plant, generally, they need a certain period of sunlight to keep alive, or light. Yeah, so they're not, you don't put it in a dark location or anything, they're just going to perish on you. Bring them inside when the temperature gets below 10 C, which is, I would say, Fahrenheit, that's about 45 is it, or? Madeline's gonna look it up. 50, okay. Anywhere below 50. I've taken mine down lower, but like I said, the weather isn't always accurate. We had a low of -4. The weather said it was going to get down to -4. It went down to -8, which is getting really cold. So generally, you know, at 50, bring it in, you're safe. If you leave it out, you're kind of, if it gets frost, you're probably going to lose the tree. Repot your tree before it gets too root bound. Brazilian rain trees are fast growers, and some will require repotting every summer. So a tree like this, you could probably go 2 years without repotting it. If you have one that looks, you know, has a big canopy, full canopy, it's going to use a lot of water and it's going to grow a big root system. So you have to repot that like every year. The danger we talked about, they don't like hard pruning. If your roots get too big and thick, you cut it off, it may upset that feeding to the upper branches. You may get a portion of your tree die off. So you've got to manage these trees right from young, pruning, you know, the soft growth, not pruning the hard growth if you can avoid it, and same with the roots. You've got to manage your roots, keeping them lots of fine feeder roots, so when you do cut one off, you're not cutting off a lifeline to your branch or your tree. If you have a tree that has like 5 coarse roots, you cut one of them off, you're going to get dieback up the trunk and up to the tree. Now, it's not to scare you away from them. They're fantastic trees. You've just got to manage them. They're easy to grow, easy to care for, fast growing, but you've got to manage them. They're not a tree you can just leave, forget about, and prune once a year kind of thing. Usually. There's always exceptions. So here's my warning. Brazilian rain trees experience dieback commonly after trim, and you want to account for this so that dead wood areas don't reach back into the trunk. Stay away from concave cutters. This will make it difficult to watch out for cutting back too far. Concave cutters, they kind of cut in a bit of a concave cut, and you don't want to do this. Whenever you're pruning a Brazilian rain tree, you can see this branch was done properly. You leave a stub, and that stub will die back. That stub will die back to the next leaf node. Nothing will ever grow from that stub. So that's what you have to do. You have to, both the roots and the top, it's best to leave it a little longer than normal, and it may die back. And same with the branches. So don't make your cuts flush. You wait for that stub to dry up. It'll turn like a, what's the color? Tan, reddish tan color when it's dead, and then you can prune it off. And they do not heal over very easily. If you take a branch off the trunk, I have one that I took off 3 or 4 years ago, and you can still see you can still see where the branch is cut off. It just kind of, it flows around it. It doesn't callus over really. It eventually will, but it's slow. It's slow healing after you prune a branch off. So again, that's why you start with a small tree and you manage it, so you don't have to make those big cuts. It's the same thing, we have fruit trees in our orchard, and it's the same with a fruit tree. Start with a fruit tree and you build the branch structure on a fruit tree, avoiding big cuts, because big cuts on any tree invites insects, disease, dieback. So yeah, same with these. You don't want to do big cuts. You want to just snip and prune and slowly grow it and develop it. Keep up on the new growth. Trimming the green limbs will help you fill in the foliage at the top of the tree and create that twisted, striped appearance in the trunk below as it grows upright. If you come across a fully formed branch that it needs to be cut, be cautious and utilize the right tool, as a mistake can damage the rest of the tree. It's better to cut and grow the new soft growth than to work with the Brazilian rain tree once it's hardened into place. So you'll find the new growth is very soft. You can see all the leaves are folding on these. They don't like it's too dark in here. The new growth is very soft and pliable. So I've heard from many people that the ideal time to prune it is when it just starts to show a little bit of woodiness to it. When it's green, it's still a little early. Just starts to get a bit of wood on it, and then you can prune it. It's usually ideal. Brazilian rain tree is a bit of an issue. First, the hardened branches are very hard wood and difficult to train. So when they do harden off, they're almost impossible to bend. It's like very hard wood, tough, very resilient. If you bend it, it just springs back. So it takes many years to get a branch to set. A lot of people use guy wires on Brazilian rain trees. They'll pull it down a branch. It'll take many, many years for that to set because the new growth has to slowly grow and harden off and counteract that existing growth that wants to spring back up. So it'll take a few years. Wiring the new softer growth is not recommended because the trees grow so quickly, and using wires can literally cut into the growth and cause it to die. You can train the new branches, they cut into the growth and cause it to die before you can train the new branches and limbs to take shape. So it's kind of, you think, well, I can wire the soft growth, put it in position, but they grow so quickly that the wire wrapped around your branch is going to cut in and kill the branch. So they don't recommend wiring Brazilian rain trees. It should be ideally clip and grow. And as I said, you can use guy wires. And even the guy wires, I've heard that people, they'll have a guy wire, they'll protect it with rubber, pull it down, and it'll cut off the lifeline to the upper part of the branch. And you may get dieback on that branch just from guy wires alone. They don't like wiring. So it's probably an ideal tree for me because I don't use a lot of wire. I don't use much any. Where are we? There are also thorns to worry about. So they're covered in thorns, these things, very sharp thorns. When they're young, they're flexible, no problem. As they get older, they harden off and they get very tough and sharp. So the thorns, if you want to, some people prune away all the thorns every time they go to work on the tree. It doesn't hurt the tree, but also the thorns, you can't prune them right flush to the trunk or you can get dieback from the thorns. So you got to prune the thorns in half, and then the thorns will get woody and then they'll fall off. Or you can pluck them off. But it's hard to believe that thorns can cause dieback on your branches, but they can. Guy wires can be effective but protect your branches with a rubber strip, and even that's not guaranteed. Wonderful bonsai. Brazilian rain trees make some of the most beautiful bonsai in the world. So let's get to work on our trees. So I hope I didn't scare you about them. They're fantastic trees, and you just have to keep those rules in mind, and then you'll have no problem with your tree.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
So you talked about how you don't want like 3 or 4 big woody roots,
Yes.
but how do you keep the roots so they don't form that way?
You've got to keep up with the root pruning, so either annually or every second year.
And just the edges where it's...
No, you can go back.
Okay.
You don't want the roots to grow. You want to clip them when they're smaller, just like the branches. It won't hurt the tree, but if they start to get really thick and woody, the more is being fed up that one root.
Okay.
When you cut it off, you get more dieback. So when they're young and fibrous, you can prune them no problem. Like today, we'll probably sort out the roots.
Okay.
And my last time I did my root pruning, my tree was a little more mature, and I did it in June when it was warm. And I did sorted them out. This was the second repotting. And I expected the tree to recover, it was June, I expected to recover in the summer and start growing. It never did. At first, the leaves never unfolded for at least till midsummer. They just stayed like this the whole time. And I thought, oh, am I giving it too much light? So I moved it to the shade, and they still wouldn't come out. And then by fall, they started opening up, and again, just in the morning and the evening. In the midday sun, they stayed closed. All winter, it got better and better. So at first in the winter, same thing. I put it inside. It would open up in the morning, close at noon, open up in the evening. So they didn't like a lot of light. And then slowly through the winter it came, so now they open up early in the morning and they stay open right till dark. And so I know it's fully recovered from the repotting. But I've heard, well, you'll hear a lot of places that say Brazilian writing trees don't like root pruning, but it's part of bonsai. If you don't prune the roots, you're not going to have a bonsai. And it's like if you don't prune the top of the tree, it's going to become a tree but not a bonsai. You're trying to keep it small and control the shape. So root pruning is necessary. You've got to work out that structure. My philosophy on roots is when the tree's young and you don't have a lot of time and money invested in it, or not money but time, that's when you sort out the roots. And if your tree dies, it dies. You don't want this tree to become this beautiful canopy that you've worked on for 7 years and then think, the roots really suck. I'm gonna have to really prune off that big root. And then it's kind of too late. It's like, so you develop your root system first, take the chance, get your roots sorted out, and then if you want to grow it larger, you've got those roots in place, and as the tree grows larger, these roots just get better and better. If your roots look like this, a tangled knot under the soil, and that tree starts thickening up, all these roots just start getting thicker and thicker, and it gets harder and harder to sort them out. So you're better to do it initially. And if the tree dies, well, you've lost the money on the tree, not years of developing this beautiful branch structure and that. So, any questions about anything? Life in general?
What's the meaning of it?
Yeah. It's that number. What's the 46? That's it. Yeah. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So, but they are fast growers. Generally, they double in size every year if you let them. You can also keep them small, but generally, if you're kind of pruning them, not only the trunk will double, but also the canopy size. So this tree will be this big next year, the next year. So they're very fast growers. So, which is great. I mean, it's a kind of tree if you like pruning, and that is a perfect tree. We should start. Madeline, she's back there. We're gonna pick the trees out now. So we do it in order of registration. So whoever registered first, which we had to pick some way. I think they're all great trees. So, and take your time picking it out. Pick your tree in your pot.